This is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Today we have a Miele dishwasher that is not doing so good. It's getting some problem with flooding in the lower drip pan. We think maybe the partition kit might be leaking. So we got it outside of the cabinet. We laid it down, got it unplugged, and we're removing the bottom panel by removing 4 screws, 2 in the front and then 2 on the bottom. Miele gives you a lot of room for the intake hose and the drain hose, so it's easy to pull it out. This is the weep hole below where sometimes the water comes out. If you notice it's dripping here, or you notice that there's some staining, that might be where it was leaking. They tend to leak maybe at about the 10-year mark. Here's the part number for a new partition kit. You can get this from Miele USA. You can just give them a call and they'll send one to you. I think eBay has them too. But to put it in, we have to remove the motor. So we're going to take some of the parts off the motor. These are the power connections for the heater. We're just going to pull them back. They're spade connectors. You just pull them back with your hands, or you can use some pliers. There's a little attachment underneath that brings power to the motor. We're going to pull that out. And then there's a few ground connectors. There's these green ones. One there, one there. There's spade connectors. And then we're going to take this hose clamp off, this black hose. We're going to pull the hose off. Basically 3 hoses we're going to take off. There's a couple at the bottom, so we're going to take off that hose clamp. Get that out of the way. We want to bring that down about 2 inches down away from the motor. And then there's one in the back behind it. And now we're taking out a couple of the electrical connectors for the heater pressure switch at the top. There's 4 of them all together. There's 2 white and 2 black. You can just pull them right out. Now we've got the spring clamp for that hose in the back. We're pushing that down out of the way. Again, maybe about 2 inches down is good. And then I usually use a standard head screwdriver to gently push that hose away from the motor. Just to kind of loosen it, because they can be on there kind of frozen from years of being there. So take your time. You don't want this rubber material to crack, so just be kind of gentle with these bottom hoses. Pull down a little bit, give it a little boost. So that one's moving pretty good. The one in the back, same thing, kind of loosen it. You don't have to take them all the way out at this point, but just want to get them moving. Alright, we're going to take one screw out here at the back. It's a Torx 15 screw that's holding the motor to the frame. It's just that one screw. Got that out. And then we're going to pull the motor toward us. Gently get that one hose off, then the other hose. I'm pulling the back of the motor out toward me to about 45 degrees so I can get this thing to let go. You can use a standard head screwdriver to kind of pry the frame back, give you more room to work. Alright, so we got the motor out, everything's disconnected. So I'm going to put this rubber bushing, rubber seal back in to the sump. Use a standard head screwdriver and gently pry up on this release, and then one on this side, because I want to get this heater pressure switch off of the housings. Just take your time, get that off. It's going to come with new seals from the kit, so we're going to take the old seals off and then put those new ones on. And that's again just to help avoid any problem with leaking. Giving you all new rubber parts. The partition kit just has a rubber seal where the motor shaft goes through, and it sometimes wears out and starts to leak a little water. So when the circulation pump fires up, you get some leaking, and then the machine will constantly be trying to drain because there's water down there. It activates a little drain switch. So we're taking out 2 screws from the top. We're going to be removing the top portion here where the heater element is, and we're going to pry up on these two metal pieces with a standard head screwdriver on both sides to get this top piece off. So we pry the other one up and then use a little pressure to get that up. And again, that's where the heater element is. Heater elements hardly ever go bad, but if you had to replace it, this is the same way you'd replace it. These motors tend to last a long time. And now we can see the impeller. We're going to take off this plastic piece on the back. We're going to put a small screwdriver into one of these holes to jam the rotation of the motor shaft. And then I'm going to twist to my left. So it's weird. It's lefty. I'm sorry. It's to my right. It's righty instead of righty tighty. It's righty lefty. It's reverse threaded. It's opposite how you normally would think. We're going to take off these two screws at the bottom. Then we're going to rotate the upper assembly slightly, and then we can pull it off. Here's the new one. Push it in and then rotate it to your left or clockwise. There's the old shaft. I'm going to put the new screws in. Put the old screws back in to hold in the bottom of the partition kit. Get those in tight. So now we're going to put on the impeller, and again, it's kind of weird. You're going to turn it to your left or counterclockwise. That's how you tighten it. It's backwards. You want to put a screwdriver in there to secure the motor shaft from turning, and then you want to get it tight. You can just do it tight with your hands. You don't have to use a wrench or pliers or anything. Just get it tight with your hands is good. Got it. Make sure it spins good. So that has cured that partition leak problem. Now this comes with a new O-ring for the heater assembly, brand new. You want to put it into that little groove there. Make sure it's fully in the groove. And then we can go ahead and put the heater assembly back on the partition kit. So it can only really go on one way. You gotta line up the screws the holes for the screws, and then there's two tabs you have to bend back to. First we'll put the screws on. We're gonna push down. Gotta make sure that's pretty tight. We don't want that part to leak. That's where water flows in and then it gets pressurized to flow out into the dishwasher. So we're gonna add those screws in. Just kind of add them in slowly. A little bit of pressure on this one, a little pressure on the other one, and then more pressure back and forth until you got that heater assembly on pretty tight. And then we'll bend the two metal tabs over, which help hold the other sides. Before you go to the point where you think the partition kit needs to be replaced, you can also make sure that you're not getting a flooding situation due to a fill valve that doesn't close. So a leaky fill valve will also make the machine flood. Bending that one back. If you came back the next morning and you look inside your dishwasher and there's a bunch of new water in there, then you know, if you haven't run it, then you know that your fill valve is leaking. You just have to replace your fill valve, which is pretty easy. If you got those metal tabs bent over, got the screws on, looks good. So that part of it's done. The partition kit's all assembled. We're going to put the heater pressure switch back on. So it only goes on one way. It only fits one way. And just make sure you push down really strong until the two plastic lugs lock in and engage. So it's on there nice and tight. So there's no point where there could be any leak. Looks good. Just checking it all out before we put it back in. I've noticed too sometimes the drain tube comes out of the dishwasher, goes right into the garbage disposal without a high loop or without an air gap. And then water can leak from the sink into your dishwasher and flood it also. That's a common cause of the flood system being activated where it's constantly draining. So we're pushing the motor back in. We're feeding the front of it back into the sump, into that rubber piece first at an angle, and then we're going to put these two tubes back on gently, the two at the bottom, and then we're going to push the motor back in, and it actually kind of clicks into place. The plastic piece behind the motor clicks into the frame, and then you know you basically got it where you want it. Just take your time here before you do the final reassembly. Make sure it's all in position. Okay, we can start now hooking things back up. Just making sure it's all lined up. It looks good. So here's those 4 electrical terminals that have to go back into the heater pressure switch. You got 4 of them, and you can't really get it wrong. They can only go in one way. So the ones in the back are the black ones. The ones closer towards you or closer to the bottom of the dishwasher are the white ones. And there's also this green ground that you have to put on. Maybe put that on first before you do the 2 white ones. There's the bigger white one, only goes in one way. And then there's a skinnier one, only goes in one way. Just make sure all 4 of them and the green one are on there nice and tight. Looks good. There's the 2 that brings power to the heating element, the spade connectors. Make sure you got them on there tight. Feed them on. Take your time here. Make sure all these connections are on really good. Here's that green earth ground connection. I'm putting the power wire back on the motor. That's the blue one at the bottom. And then here is the green earth connection. We'll put that on here in a second. We're going to put this black tube back on, put the spring clamp back on. Okay, now I'm going to reach in with my pliers and grab that spring clamp on the back hose and get it up back where it was. And then I got this one on the front hose. Put that one back up where it was. Make sure they're on tight. Got it. Alright, I'm putting this last earth ground connection. This is near the back of the motor. Our little spade connector. Looks good. Make sure all the connections look clean and good. We're going to put a little screw there in the back that's going to hold the motor into position. That's that Torx 15 screw. There we go. And we're going to put the bottom panel back on the drip tray. Put 2 in the front, 2 in the bottom. Also, I removed a low panel in the front. I got to put that back on. I get it back on its feet. I'm going to push it back in the cabinet. Give it a test. Before that, though, I'm underneath the sink, and I'm taking the drain tube, and I got this thing bent way up toward the top of the sink so that water cannot flow back from the sink in through the garbage disposer, in through the drain hose, into the dishwasher and flood it. This is really important. Otherwise, every time the sink fills up, it'll flood your dishwasher. I'm just making sure it's held up there. So hope this has been helpful to you and cures your problem. Thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe.